welcome to the Sara Carter Show. So happy to have you here with me today. Boy, this is going to be a huge show. Another special of specials, another investigative series that you are going to just be like on the edge of your seat. Literally, you will be on the edge of your seat. Now, before I even get started, before I even tell you, I want you to go and subscribe to the Sara Carter Show. I want you to go get on your Apple, your Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm going to repeat this again at the end of the show. And if you're enjoying the show, remember to give us that big 5-star review. That's what we need, a big 5-star review. You can also read all the latest stories at saracarter.com. Follow me on Twitter at SaraCarterDC. And you can also follow me on Instagram. Always have fun stuff there at SCarterDC on Instagram. Please follow me there. Now, I am going to talk to you about something that I've never talked about before on the show. I'm pushing November to November. I know so many of you are exhausted and tired of politics. Me too sometimes, because there are bigger things in this world than that. And one of them is about the Pentagon's program. And I know many of you out there have seen the New York Times story talking about the Pentagon's program to study unidentified aerial phenomenon, or unidentified flying objects, as many of us know. It sounds so far out there. It sounds like science fiction. But look, folks, we live in a world that's completely upside down right now. Nothing sounds crazy to me. And especially this. This is a topic that could change all of human history. It is the most important topic right now, I believe, in our present modern world. And we've seen shows about this, coming out, trickling out. And a lot of that had to do with a man that is going to be on the show. His name is Lou Elizondo. He is an incredible human being. He's a former military intelligence official and a special agent in charge. But before I even get to him and the Pentagon's program, I want to know if you guys feel like sometimes at night you don't feel safe. You think a UFO might be hovering over your house. You think someone could sneak in through the back door or get in through your window. If you do, you need to get Simply Safe, right? You need to get Simply Safe. It's got everything you need to protect your home with none of the drawbacks of traditional home security. I can tell you this. It is important. It is important to keep you and your family safe. And now that I'm talking about UFOs and alien abductions, it's even better because I've got a deal for you. And it's an arsenal of sensors and cameras that can blanket every room in your house, every window, every door. It's tailored specifically for your home and to protect you and your family. Professional monitoring keeps watch day and night. It's ready to call the police, the fire department, medical professionals. If there's an emergency, you can set it up yourself. That's how easy it is. It's just that easy. You can set it up yourself in under an hour. Just peel and stick the sensors exactly where you need them. You don't even need a technician. And there is no contract and no pushy sales guys. This is Simply Safe, folks. Simply Safe. And in this day and age, you want to keep your family safe. Trust me. I know. We all know. This isn't just some gimmick. This is about really keeping your family safe. And that's why I bring this up. And that's why I believe in this product. I believe in this product. That's why I'm talking to you about it. Call Simply Safe today. Try it. Go to simplysafe.com/Carter. Go to simplysafe.com/Carter and you'll get free shipping and a 60-day risk-free trial. That's how much I believe in this product. There's nothing to lose. That's simplysafe.com/Carter. Go there. Now, as we go on, we're going to be talking about a subject that for so many people can be very uncomfortable. People don't want to go out there. They don't want to put themselves on the line. I understand. But we're living in a different world now. We live in a world where we have technologies that are able to capture and record phenomena that before maybe people talked about and nobody else believed, right? They thought, has this person lost their minds? Or this can't be true. Or, the government finds a way to cover it up and calls it a weather balloon, whatever, we want to go back to the Roswell incident. But now we have technology and we have capabilities that we never had before. And we are able to record these phenomena for the most part. And we have. And this is the reason why the New York Times, not that I believe everything the New York Times wrote, because my gosh, I broke a ton of stories on the Russia hoax and they were wrong on it. But this story is verified that there was and there is a department at the Pentagon that is monitoring what they call unidentified aerial phenomena. Lou Elizondo led that department inside the Pentagon. He is not there now. He moved on. He still holds a very high level security clearance. He was the former director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. It is a secretive Pentagon unit that studied these UFOs, these unidentified aerial phenomenons. And as a senior counterintelligence officer for the Department of Defense, he operated in Afghanistan. I've traveled there many times. Look, Lou has been all over the place. He has worked with our government. They have entrusted him with some of the highest classified secrets, including this. But there is a lot of evidence out there that this exists, and we have been witness to that. So I think the government is coming to a point where Americans are going to be made, and the world for that matter, more aware of what these possibilities are. What is it that we're seeing? What is it that our Navy is seeing? What is it that our pilots are seeing? Commercial air pilots. What is it that we are seeing in our night skies that we cannot explain? Is this a national security risk? Yes, this is a national security risk, because when you hear Lou talk about these spacecraft, about these ships that have been recorded and monitored and out there now, the Tic Tac incident is one of those that you can see online that the government has declassified. You can watch his show, Unidentified, Inside America's UFO Investigations. That's Inside America's UFO Investigations. And the reason I had him on the show, I'm bringing him back over and over again, is because, like I said at the top, this is probably one of the most important discoveries of modern history, of mankind. What if we find out we are not alone? What if we find out that we are being visited? What if it is a national security risk from one of our foreign foes or partners? We don't know right now, but you got to hear him out. You got to listen to Lou Elizondo and let me know what you think. Remember, you can reach out to me anytime on Twitter at Sara Carter DC. I listen to that. I listen to what you have to say, and I'm bringing back Lou over and over again on the show. This is how important this topic is to me. Here you go. Okay, Lou, this has been a long time coming. I have for so long we had a lunch together, and I wanted to just sit down and interview you probably for about 2 years now. And we've always been just kind of hit and miss. So I'm so grateful to have you on the Sara Carter Show today. It means a lot to me because so much has happened over the last 2 years, particularly since you went public with the information from the Pentagon on it's not UFO anymore, folks, not so much, not unidentified flying objects, but unidentified aerial phenomena. So thank you so much, Lou, for being on the show today.
Ms. Carter, it's my honor and pleasure. Thank you very much. And before we begin, I also want to do a quick thank you to your spouse. I know he served in the military and, unfortunately sustained some injuries. I just want to say thank you for his service. And again, thank you for your service. I'm not sure the American people realize that when a service member goes overseas or serves their country, there are people that are left behind that are also still serving their country. And very much you and your family have served just as much as he. And I want to thank you on behalf of the American people. Thank you for your service as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Lou. And you also served our nation. I want to go into that a little bit. Let's just talk about your background a little bit before we dive into the subject that everybody is like on the edge of their seats wanting to discuss. This is probably one of the most important topics globally. And I think of interest of science is, are we alone in the universe? But you're the man on the forefront of bringing that to the people of the world, not just the American people, but everyone around the world. We want answers. We want to know what's going on. But you also served our nation, and you have been serving our nation since you were a young man. Can you give people some insight into what you've done? I mean, you've been in Afghanistan, you've been in Central America, South America. Talk a little bit about your work.
Yeah, sure. I think like a lot of folks, they get into some sort of service related profession because they have a desire to serve the American people. In my case, I come from on my father's side an immigrant family. They're all exiles from Cuba. My father was involved in the Bay of Pigs. For me, freedom and independence is something that has to be earned, and there's a sacrifice behind it. And I was taught at a very young age from my family that freedom isn't free. And so for me, I felt that after graduating college, that it was my time to give a little back. And so I decided to join the United States Army. A lot of folks out there that have been in the Navy and Air Force and whatnot, there's this kind of rivalry we have. I tell people I guess I didn't have a high enough ASVAB score to get into the other services, but I was very fortunate. And as a young man, I went into the United States Army. And it really helped me be who I am today. From the Army, I was involved in some special activities and programs after that, and recruited into a very nuanced effort. And that took me to Latin America, and we were running intelligence operations, primarily counterinsurgency, human intelligence, counterintelligence, and some counter narcotics. And then my life changed, like it did for a whole lot of people after 9/11. My focus became primarily at that point counterterrorism and counterintelligence, focusing on places like Afghanistan and the Middle East. No, not really a whole lot different than other folks who've been in the military. I'm sure they can relate. And after that, I found myself working in DC.
This is the best part, guys, because I mean, it's all amazing, but your life is so incredible because not only did you work in these very, I call it cloak and dagger activities or departments within the military, but then you go to the most compelling, most secretive, most investigated, I would think, area of the Pentagon, right? We didn't even know until you went public that there was a division actually continuing to investigate unidentified aerial phenomena or UFOs. We had no idea. So talk a little bit about that. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm just so excited about this part of your story.
No, I understand. You're absolutely right. In 2008, by the way, I didn't ask for the position. Most of the jobs I've ever had in the department, pretty much I was voluntold. I was assigned. So as your husband can attest, a lot of times you're just told to do a mission, and that's what you do. That's your job. In this particular case, in 2008, I had left working the Director of National Intelligence, the DNI, and was asked to come over to the Department of Defense to establish some new programs. And it was during that time that some people approached me, not too different than what you would see in a Hollywood movie, which is kind of bizarre. But some folks showed up to my office and they said, "Hey, are you Lou Elizondo? We'd like to talk to you." And of course, the first thing that comes to mind is, what I do now, right?
Right.
And they said, "Listen, you have some background in aerospace, we see, and you're a CI guy, counterintelligence guy, and we'd like to talk to you about maybe using some of your expertise in a portfolio that we have. It's a very nuanced portfolio. We can't tell you much about it, but if you're interested, let us know." And so after about 2 or 3 of these really kind of mysterious, weird meetings where I wasn't quite sure, someone's setting me up here, is this a joke, or is this some sort of IG investigation? Long story short, they asked me to attend a meeting at an undisclosed facility in the DC area, NCR, National Capital Region. And there I sat down with a gentleman. He, you're I don't want to say your typical scientist, but when you think of a rocket scientist, you think of somebody who just, they ooze that educated look. Well, this gentleman was definitely that.
Was it Elon Musk? No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, this person was not Elon Musk. He had he wore glasses, a very nice suit, but clearly he was indeed a scientist. And he sat down and he asked me, said, "Look, very, very impressive background. We think that you're going to make a good fit here, but I got to ask you a question." I said, "Sure." And he said, "What do you think about UFOs?" And kind of took me by surprise for a second. And of course, you're thinking to yourself, is this a trick question? Is this just trying to, assess my gullibility? And I told him the truth. I said, I I don't think about UFOs. I said, well, what do you mean you don't think about UFOs? I said, well, I don't have the luxury to. I don't have an opinion either way. I don't have any data in front of me, and quite frankly, I'm busy on other things. His response to me was that's great, Lou. I'm glad you have that open mind, but don't let your own bias, analytic bias, get in your way, because you may learn some things that will really surprise you.
1 second, Lou. Did that when I'm hearing you describe this moment, I mean, was it just kind of like, what went through your mind? Were you just like, holy cow, I am so going to take this job? Or, whoa, wait a minute, do I want to jump into this? What were the thoughts running through your mind at that moment?
I think the first thought was, okay, there's a hidden camera here somewhere, and a bunch of my old special operations friends are setting me up. Right?
Yeah, I could see them doing that.
Right, and because they're kind of crazy that way sometimes.
That's right.
But he didn't flinch, and he wasn't smiling, he wasn't laughing, and he had a stack of papers on his desk, and I knew very quickly he was serious. This was not a joke. And so, I guess I approach this the same way I do everything else. Take the topic of UFOs out of the equation, and what you're left is with a big question of what something is. No different than when you're running a counterterrorism investigation or an espionage investigation. You're trying to find facts, and you're trying to collect evidence and present that evidence before a jury, if you will. So I think basically my initial response was probably like everybody else. I kind of leaned back a little bit in my chair and kind of looked at him and was trying to assess his body language. But very quickly I realized he was serious. And at that point, I also realized I probably couldn't have this conversation with anybody else at this point.
That's very interesting, because this is going back to 2008. You ended up taking the job. You still have a security clearance. There are things that let me bring this up so that all of you out there who are listening to Lou right now, I mean, he has this phenomenal show. It's called Unidentified, Inside America's UFO Investigation, and it's on History Channel. And I got to tell you, it just blows my mind, because he gets people on the show that have never spoken publicly before. These are senior officials within the military, people who have firsthand eyewitness accounts of these phenomena that cannot be explained. But you are very clear in the show, and you're very clear in in real life, that you are not going to discuss anything that is classified. So everything that you are discussing right now with me on the Sara Carter Show is these are situations that have been declassified. Am I right? Or situations that you can discuss?
I mean, these are details I can certainly discuss, because I think there's a big mystery on what makes information classified.
Right.
And really, according to U.S. law, there's really only two things, the reason why you classify information, and that's to protect sources and methods. So as long as I don't get into any detail about sources and methods, for example, specifics on individuals and how information is collected, right? Anything that could give away a key piece of our capability to a foreign adversary, I should be okay. There are security classification guides that I have to obviously be familiar with. There are categories of information that I absolutely cannot discuss, and I don't intend to. I mean, I very much take my oath, my security oath, seriously. My non-disclosure agreements. I still do have my security clearance. That's an absolute fact. So, to some degree, my hands are a little bit tied. But from another perspective too, I have a lot more freedom now than I ever had before when I was an ATIP.
Right. So talk to me a little bit about. Well, first, let's jump into something that I know all of you out there want to hear. First of all, it's the Tic Tac incident. Obviously, when I was texting Lou yesterday, and I was doing it by voice command, it said the Tic Tac incident. No, this is the Tic Tac incident that happened in 2014, correct? And this was with our U.S. Navy and the Nimitz. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that was the first major episode of your series, and I found it to be so fascinating. And there were so many eyewitnesses, and you delved into it like I've never seen anyone in regards to taking so seriously what is a viable situation that could possibly be a threat, we don't know, of these unidentified aerial phenomena?
Yeah, sure. So the Tic Tac incident actually began in 2004 in November timeframe.
2004.
Believe it or not. No, you're you're not. You're still accurate because these events continued all the way up until to present day. So actually, you are accurate. But let's start, I guess, maybe with the genesis of the whole Tic Tac event for maybe your listeners who aren't familiar with it. In November 2004, the USS Nimitz Battle Group, which is a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, along with a bunch of other boats, they're going out and they're doing what they call their workups. And their workups are basically kind of training up before you go on a real-world deployment, right? This is post 9/11. The United States has got a huge security posture, and the Nimitz is about to go out and do its job. So for the months before this deployment, they're doing workups, they're training. And as a result, you have this huge Navy footprint out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, off the coast of San Diego, California. And lo and behold, you have these aircraft. You have two F-18 fighters, Navy fighters, that are in this simulation dogfight with two Marine Corps F-18s. And this is common. This is how you practice, right? And all of a sudden, the crackling over the radio, you hear these voices, and these voices are coming in from, at the time, the E-2 Hawkeye, which is the if you will think of a quarterback on a ball field. They had this huge radar dome, and their job is to have a common operating picture of the battle space using this super radar. You also have a ship, the USS Princeton at the time, that has a Spy 1 radar, one of the world's premier radar arrays on the planet at the time. And all of a sudden, you hear these voices coming into the pilots, and the pilots recount this on the show, but they've also done this for others as well. And all of a sudden, they're vectored. They say, hey, listen, there's something on the radar we're picking up. We want you guys to go check it out. So lo and behold, the two Navy F-18s go out, not sure what this is. They're thinking maybe, is it a drill? Is it an exercise? And the voices on the radio that are both on the Princeton and on the E-2 Hawkeye say, this is not a drill. This is real world. So naturally, the pilots are thinking maybe this is some sort of drug interdiction, or maybe there's an airplane that went down. And as they look into the water, they notice this roiling of the ocean. And above that is this object that is described by the pilots as a white Tic Tac. It's this perfectly smooth, cylindrical shaped object, no wings, no means of thrust or propulsion, no cockpit, no lights, no rivets, just this smooth object that looks like a white Tic Tac. And this thing is moving erratically over the surface of the water, about 50 feet, and not like a helicopter that would be hovering. This thing is really moving erratically.
How big is it? It's how big was it?
Yeah, you're about right. About 40 feet. So
40 feet.
An approximate estimation is this object's about 40 feet. And as one of the pilots at the time, Commander Dave Fravor, goes into a little bit more of an offensive position to get a good look at this thing, all of a sudden, this thing starts countering his maneuvers, elevates in altitude, and then all of a sudden just takes off like a bat out of hell, gone over the horizon within literally a blink of an eye. And this was witnessed not only by Commander Fravor and Jim Slate, who've now been on the record to talk about this, but two other individuals who are still, by the way, active duty and very senior in the Navy, whose identity I won't reveal right now because they've asked not to be revealed. But they all saw the same object at the same time, at the same place, do exactly the same thing. Now, let's take this into context. These are trained observers. These are individuals who are trained to look at an aircraft 20 miles away and determine, is it an F-16, is it an Su-22, is it a MiG-25, or is it a European Tornado? Right. And yet this thing doesn't look like any aircraft they've ever seen. Oh, by the way, it turns out that this encounter was backed up by radar data on both the E-2 Hawkeye and the USS Princeton, and there's gun camera footage, right? So it's easy for someone to say, look, maybe they saw something, it was an optical illusion, it was a weather anomaly, but now you have it actually on gun camera footage and radar data. So you have three separate data points all looking at the same object at the same place and doing the same things. This was really the first time we had this compelling data we had the technology to capture one of these things.
After that, was that when the Pentagon realized, okay, this is really important? The U.S. military, I know other nations, other nation status, Great Britain, France, Germany, other nations, Russia, are very interested in what they consider to be UFOs, unidentified flying objects, unidentified aerial phenomena. Was this the point where the United States government said, whoa, wait a minute, we need to start monitoring this, or did it happen later after numerous other sightings?
That's a great question. The answer is going to be both yes and no, and let me explain that for a minute. So the United States government has had other quote unquote UFO or UAP programs in the past. And I think most notably people are aware of maybe tangentially of a program called Project Blue Book. Since World War II, our pilots have been reporting strange things in the sky. Back then, they referred to them as quote unquote foo fighters. But enough pilots were witnessing these, and allied pilots, where I think the U.S. military realized there's something to this. What this is, we don't know yet, but something is really there. And so you've had over decades these different iterations of programs that have come forward and been revealed. Now, when you ask me the question, is this the first time the U.S. government in recent history took this topic seriously? Mm-hmm. The answer is a definitive yes. But I'll also share with you, Sarah, that not too long ago, for a while when I was part of ATIP, I really thought this was it. We were kind of the first, if you will, and premier program like this in the U.S. government. But it wasn't until afterwards that, and I have to be careful about providing the circumstances, but I met an individual, and I met this individual in official U.S. government spaces. And this individual was sponsored by some very, very senior people. And they asked me to come in and give them, if you will, a back briefing of the ATIP program. And these are senior government officials. So I gave them a briefing, and I noticed there was a gentleman sitting in the back corner, older gentleman, didn't say anything, didn't introduce himself, was just listening to me. And because I was invited to speak with them, obviously I'm not going to ask them who this individual is. It's really, frankly, none of my business. When I was finished with this briefing, the individual stood up. He walked over to me. He shook my hand. He said, "I just wanted to let you know, Lou, I used to have your program." Now, I didn't know what he meant by that, because obviously I've had a lot of programs in my time, in my career. And I said, "So which one are you referring to?" And he looked at me and he said, "The program you're briefing on right now. I used to run the same program back in the Navy in the 1980s. Huh. So that, exactly right. That, to me, that was kind of frankly, a stunning moment, because up to that point, truthfully, I didn't know that there was ever truly another program after Blue Book.
Right, because Blue Book was supposed to be the end of it. Just for every one of you out there who doesn't know about Project Blue Book, I mean, Blue Book really was like, we're closing the books, the United States government, on, aerial phenomena. We don't have any evidence of it. It was like when the Air Force tried to throw everybody off, for those people especially that believe and that have said there's so much evidence out there that there is unidentified flying objects or aerial phenomena that is not from this earth or appears not to be from this earth, or something that the United States government can't identify. Am I right, Lou, that this was Project Blue Book, was they were out there to investigate it, and basically after Project Blue Book, they threw away the key. That's what we were told.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. And I'll share something else with you, Sarah, and your audience that very few people are aware of. When I went down to South America, Latin America here this last year for one of the episodes, we had spoken to with some very senior active duty military personnel in some other countries down there. I was absolutely floored. When I went to Uruguay, I spoke to some of the military individuals who run their existing program. Now, here in the United States, we don't like to talk about it, but down there in Latin America and other countries, they have no problems talking about UAPs, UFOs. In fact, they have actually official government-sanctioned programs that's paid by the government. And in this particular case, the longest-standing government-controlled UFO program in this hemisphere is actually out of Uruguay. And when I went down there and they started giving me a briefing on their current investigations and what they're seeing, I asked them very specifically, you began back in the late 70s. What predicated this? Why did you start this program back in the 70s? And they said to me, and it's on camera, they said, we started this program because of a direct request by the United States Embassy in 1978 here. They asked us to do it. And then they provided us, the United States Embassy provided us all the investigative material and standard operating procedures for Project Blue Book. And all
so
of a
was
sudden
Uruguay, was Uruguay a cutout? Was that what it was?
That's a great question. Sarah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's one is led to believe that, okay, the U.S. government is washing their hands officially of this, or certainly at least publicly, but behind back channels is asking other countries to now do what the U.S. government is pretending not to do. And when they open up the books, I'm looking at these SOPs, I'm looking at the investigative procedures. They are absolutely right out of the United States handbook for Project Blue Book. So the question is, why is there such a disparity? Is it a stigma issue? Is there some sort of weird national security issue? So those are some of the things, some of the questions that, when you say, hey, the program ended.
Right. Well, you brought up something.
Maybe no.
Well, you brought up something, sorry to cut you off, but you brought up something that was really important. And I think I heard it repeated over and over again in your television series, Unidentified, Inside America's UFO Investigation. For all of you out there who are interested in this subject, I mean, this is for me, like if I were to do anything else in my life, this is what I would study, because I think it's probably going to be one of the greatest, if not the greatest discoveries in human history, will be to find out that we're either not alone in the universe or that we are. I mean, we don't have the answers yet. So I think this is, for me, one of the greatest moments of human history. And we're at an apex now where we can record these. This is what Lou's saying. We can, monitor our skies the way we've never been able to before. But you said, Lou, you would say this is a process, not an event. That was really interesting to me because, and you were talking about the revelation, like for humanity to understand. Like, I mean, it would be kind of weird if like all of a sudden out of nowhere, we were visited, right? We had an encounter, what they call a close encounter, like just a ship landed and all of a sudden, like, it's like Independence Day or something. Crazy aliens are running around and they're looking weird. And I mean, I think it would throw a shockwave through our planet, but a process of unraveling, right? Our universe. What do you mean by that? Is it our process? Is it the process of who we're being visited by? What do you think it is that we're coming to a point where we are going to have some of these answers?
Well, first of all, thank you for asking that question, because I think that quote unquote disclosure with a capital D is a process, and it's a process for many people for many different reasons. I've often said that this is a topic that affects us all equally because we all live on this little rock together called Earth, but also differently. We're all raised a little different. We have different philosophical leanings and theological leanings and sociological leanings and political leanings, right? So this is a topic that, I'm not a smart enough man to tell people how they should process this. That's not my job. You want to know what that is, to go talk to your priest or your rabbi, or you want to talk to an academic or a scientist. My job is simply to look at this from a national security perspective. And we've come to realize that even just from that narrow slice of the pie perspective, it's been a monumental effort. There are people who just don't want to have the conversation. And there's, again, a lot of reasons for it.
Why is that? Why? Name some of them. Name just a couple of those reasons why people won't want to discuss this.
Wow. Well, I can tell you from personal perspective. I've had an experience where I had a very senior person in the U.S. government told me flat out, Lou, we want you to stop this program. And my response was, well, okay, sir, I can understand that, but can you give me the reason why? Because from our perspective, these things are absolutely real. We are seeing these, we're recording them, we've got the date on them. And the response back to me was, Lou, we're not arguing that they're real. We know they're real. but we don't think you know what they really are. And so at that point, I'm thinking, oh, maybe this is some sort of secret U.S. kind of program that they didn't read me onto, which I'm fine with. And I said, well, okay, sir, that's fine. And his response back to me was, what you're dealing with are demonic beings. And, I can respect people's philosophical and theological positions. I'm not here to argue that with anybody. But at the same time, to jump to a conclusion like that and stop a valid program from looking at a potential national security threat because it goes against one's theological belief system, I think that's a mistake. And that's just one example. I'll tell you another example. I was at a briefing with a very, very senior member of the Department of Defense. I mean, one of the top people. I won't mention the person's name. And after an hour briefing and showing videos and having pilots come in and give their testimony, at the end of that discussion, I had this complete blank stare on this person's face. And they looked at me and they asked me about how the Miami Hurricanes are doing this football season. And it occurred to me at that point that we're talking about a topic that some people just, for whatever reason, you just can't process it. And I'm pretty sure different people are going to take this differently. So I can't speak on behalf of everybody, but I can tell you from personal experience, there are some individuals who, that for whatever reason, this just conflicts with their view on how the world should be and how the universe should be, potentially.
Do you think, Lou, that we have actually been visited? I mean, I'm just, or do you believe that, like others, like some people just chalk it up to, oh, maybe this is some kind of classified government program that we just don't understand? Or do you believe, based on the evidence that has been collected and the people that you have interviewed, just based on that there is something here that goes far beyond our Earth, something that we may be dealing with? I mean, I find it hard to believe that we're alone in such a vast universe.
Well, let's start with that. You asked me a question. I think that deserves a thorough answer. So let me start by saying, people say, well, could this be some sort of secret U.S. technology? Well, you don't spend $22 million of taxpayer money to try to figure out your own technology. You don't do that. You don't fly a super secret aircraft over major populated U.S. cities if you want them to stay secret. We have entire test ranges for that purpose. So for someone to make the argument this is really some sort of U.S. secret technology, if that was the case, this would be such a breakdown in our own ability to be aware, situational aware over our own skies, that we'd be in trouble. We'd have to fire the entire Department of Defense and the intelligence community and start over. So I don't think it's our technology. The next question is it foreign adversarial technology? Well, okay, let's go down that rabbit hole for a second. If that's the case, then there is some foreign adversary who has managed to leapfrog ahead of us, not just to next generation technology, but beyond next generation technology. And oh, by the way, they've done this now for decades. If that's the case, and that's really what's happening here, then you're looking at one of the greatest intelligence failures of this country, eclipsing that of 9/11 intelligence failure. So if that's the case, then we've got some significant problems. Now, let's take out of the equation, it's not U.S. technology and it's not foreign adversarial technology. Then what is it? Well, I think there's lots of options. Without going into what my personal opinion is, because I think, Sarah, at the end of the day, my opinion doesn't count. I know people want to know, Lou, what do you think? And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what Lou thinks. My job as an investigator has always been very simple. Collect the truth, speak the truth. That's it. And provide that information, that evidence to the jury. And in this case, Sarah, as I've mentioned before, you are the jury. Your audience is the jury. So my job is simple. Give the information, provide it over to you in a consumable manner, and then you make a determination what it means.
Tell me that evidence, because this is so important. I want people to understand, at least with the Tic Tac incident, right? And the incidents that you've been able to expose and document along with others. Explain just quickly kind of what the capabilities of these technologies that we're monitoring are doing. Just so you guys out there can understand it, because it's incredible. I mean, when you hear what he has to say, it's going to blow your mind, because we don't have anything today. Nothing today that can actually do that I've ever seen or read about.
No, you're absolutely correct, Sarah. And this is why in the program that I was part of, ATIP, we had to, as an intelligence organization, because ultimately this was an intelligence activity, we had to try to, if you will, separate the wheat right from the chaff. And in order to do that, what you need to do is come up with certain categories that allow you to put these objects into these little neat boxes and say, okay, this is something that truly does not fit into anything that we currently have. So what are those categories? Well, we refer to them as the observables. And there are 5, if you will, observables from a scientific perspective we can look at and say, okay, that is definitely not our technology. So the question is, what are those observables? Well, the first one is instantaneous acceleration. Let's take this pen for a second. And if I go from this position to this position and back again, there are certain inertial forces that are experienced on the pen. And it's a product of acceleration. And so to put this into context, the human being can withstand about 9 G forces before you start having significant physiological effects on the human body. In fact, we create G suits to try to minimize those effects. Now, that in comparison to, let's say, an F-16, which is one of our most highly maneuverable aircraft, designed specifically to handle these heavy G loads, can hold about 16 Gs before you start having wings snap off the aircraft. The objects we're seeing are performing well above 400, 500, 600, 700 G forces, something well beyond the healthy biological limitations for something to withstand.
That's just
so you're done.
Insane. I mean, when you think about that, it's insane. I mean, for us to comprehend that, it's so fast. For all of you out there that are listening to Lou, it would be so fast that it would be like you would see your pen in your right hand and then it would automatically just show up in your left. You wouldn't even see the movement. Yeah. It's that fast.
Or actually, it would be a greater analogy is you have a pen in your left hand and all of a sudden it shows up in Miami. I mean, you're talking about something that is accelerating well beyond anything that we know technologically can do.
And we have that documented, correct? We have that documented.
Absolutely, we do. And it's on radar. And we've had this actually. The scary thing is we've had this data since going back to the 1950s. But that's another story. And then the other observable, the second observable, because I haven't forgot your question, is hypersonic velocity. Now, hypersonic velocity are those speeds that are defined in excess of Mach 5. So you're looking at speeds well above 3,000 miles an hour. Now, we know there's only a few vehicles that are in our inventory can go that fast.
Not a NASCAR, just throwing in a joke.
Right. No, we're talking like literally a rocket, right? Or we're talking about a hypersonic missile. And by the way, those objects can't stop on a dime and they can't change directions, right? They're moving so fast that you can't change directions. Plus, there's something called signatures. When you're moving that fast, you have heat ablation off the front of the aircraft. You have atmospheric ionization, the stripping of the electrons off of the atmosphere. You have acoustic signatures like sonic booms, and you have contrails, right? The smoke that everybody sees behind a jet plane when it's flying at altitude. And yet these things have none of those signatures. They don't have a sound. They're not breaking. You don't hear the sound barrier being broken, that sonic boom. You don't have the associated contrails. You don't have anything. And these are somehow able to do it. They have no wings. They have no control surfaces. They have no obvious means of propulsion. So that's the second observable. The third observable is a bit of an oxymoron, but it's called low observability. They're hard to track on radar. When you look at them with the naked eye, you see something, but it's really hard to figure out what it is.
Are they cloaked? I mean, is it cloaked? Is that how you're seeing it? Is it kind of like cloaked against the sky, or is it because it's moving so fast?
Well, in some cases, when it's not moving, it's hovering. It's still really bizarre. The human eye can sometimes see it and see it clearly, but we have nothing to compare it to describe it. It like you hear it. It's a giant Tic Tac, right? But what does that mean? I mean, a Tic Tac shouldn't fly. A Tic Tac doesn't hover. A Tic Tac doesn't move at hypersonic velocities, and yet that's what all of them are seeing. It makes no sense, and yet there it is, and there it is in the gun camera, and there it is on radar. So that's kind of one of those things that you look at from a category perspective, low observability, where it's still this enigma, right? Mm-hmm. The fourth observable is something called transmedium travel. So back to our aircraft analogy here, a plane looks like a plane because we design it to fly in the atmosphere. It has a nose, it has a tail, it has an engine, it has a rudder because it has to fly. Now, a plane doesn't look like a rocket. A rocket that is in low Earth orbit, there is no atmosphere. In fact, wings are useless. So you have thrusters and you have a chemical rocket engine. And if you compare a rocket to, let's say, a submarine is underwater. It doesn't look like a plane or a rocket. It uses a propeller and it uses buoyancy to go up and down. So my point being here is that when you have an object that you want to operate in two different environments, let's say a seaplane, right? Mm-hmm. You can have a plane that flies and also one that lands in water, but it's always a design compromise. A seaplane is neither a really good airplane, nor is it really good on the water. It's always a compromise. Yet the things we're seeing can fly in our atmosphere, potentially low Earth orbit, and even underwater, and they're not changing their design characteristics. They can perform exactly the same as they do in any other environment. So
that just blows my mind. Technology. And we have evidence of this. The Pentagon has evidence of this. The Defense Department has evidence of this. This is a situation actually that happened off the coast of Catalina, correct? Where they actually saw military personnel actually saw one of these described Tic Tacs go under the water, correct?
Yeah, it was reported and potentially even picked up by submarines. If your audience is interested, there's a little known, I don't know how to say this the right way, a little known endeavor, and there was by the Navy, and they actually have a nickname for these things, and they're called fast movers. These are objects that are being tracked underwater, moving much, much quicker than the laws of physics allow underwater. So it's just kind of if you're interested, you can look up that term Navy fast movers and you'll see some data on it. And of course, the last observable is positive lift, or I guess maybe in the vernacular, anti-gravity. You have an object in order to defy the natural effects of Earth's gravitational pull. There's really only three ways to do it. One is flight, right? You have your plane here flying, and you have four fundamental forces. You have thrust, lift, drag, and weight. And when you know how to manipulate those, you can have an airplane, you fly. Another way is sheer ballistics. You can put enough of a charge under something like a giant mortar or a missile, where you can literally blow it up for a little while, defying Earth's gravity. And then, of course, it falls back down. And then the last way is through buoyancy, or lighter than air, like a hot air balloon or a helium balloon that we see all the time. These will seemingly defy the natural effects of Earth's gravity up till it gets up to about a certain altitude, and then they come back down again. But those are really the only ways we know how to defy Earth's gravity. And yet these things don't have wings, they don't have engines, they don't have control surfaces. By all accounts, these things are flying, but they don't have any means of lift. There's no rocket engine, there's no jet engine, there's no propeller, there's nothing. And so yet there it is again, the enigma that we're forced to deal with, that we know it's not our technology. We're pretty darn sure it's not foreign adversarial technology. So then whose is it?
Right. So this is more, I'm going to ask a few more questions because I need to get to these with you, Lou. I'm taking a lot longer than I would normally with any other guest because it's so fascinating to me. So I'm going to ask you here live, so to speak, on the air with you. Would you be willing to continue to come back on the Sara Carter Show and just be able to talk to us more about this? Because this, to me, is one of the most important stories of our lifetime. I mean, I've covered a lot of stories. Nothing compares to this, in my opinion.
Sara, you have an amazing show. It would be my honor and privilege to come back anytime you want.
Wow, you guys heard that out there, right? You heard it out there. Lou Elizondo has agreed to come back on the show and we're going to work on this together because I think getting the word out to the American people, which is going to lead me to this question. Has the President Trump and other presidents, I know I've remember Bob Lazar and he was somebody who came out and spoke out, and a lot of people who are, I guess I don't want to say UFO fans or people that are interested in the subject know who Bob Lazar is, that he said he worked at Area 51, that he said other presidents were aware of this. I'd like to get your take on him. But is President Trump aware of what aware of what is happening now? And also the Senate Intelligence Committee and others because to me, this is a real national security issue.
So, Sara, I'm going to try to answer this as best I can without answering on behalf of other people. Because I'm no longer in the U.S. government, I do not have the right or the privilege to answer on behalf of the U.S. government. But I think it's fair to assess at this point that the President of the United States has been briefed on aspects of this, and certainly members of Congress have been. In some cases, I have direct knowledge of some of these briefings. With that said, who was actually briefed on what they were actually briefed on? I'm going to politely deflect and allow them to answer that question. I think when you have senators being briefed on a topic and they come back and they say, hey, by the way, this is serious, we need to look into it, that should be an indicator to the American people that this is a serious topic. You don't have elected officials putting their political careers on the line and potentially their election just to go chase shadows. That's right. Not what they're going to do. These people are risk averse. And, that one of their primary motivations is to be reelected. And if you look like a kook or a loon, chances are you're not going to get reelected.
Right.
So I think it's fair to say that enough people now, there's a critical mass where enough people have realized that this is real. The reality is here. Now,
the stigma is changing. That's what we're seeing, a change in the stigma. It's not just about, I used to call it UFO theory. Every time somebody would try to downplay a story or make it a conspiracy theory, I would call it UFO theory, because for a long time, somebody would say, oh, I saw something in the sky. It was completely bizarre. Or, these would be normal people with no psychological issues whatsoever. And immediately, even if it was on the news, you would hear newscasters like, ha, 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 they would play UFO music. They would laugh about it. They would blow it off. But now Tucker Carlson, who I think is a remarkable guy, Fox News, a friend, somebody who I have a lot of respect for, he put you on his show. He is taking this seriously. And he has said, this story himself, he has said, is one of the greatest stories of modern human history, if we can prove it.
Well, the stigma is changing in part because of the courage of people like you, Sarah. I mean, you are in the media. And you have a tremendous amount to lose from a credibility perspective. And, I think you're right. I think 3 years ago, you were probably considered crazy to report on this issue. And now I think we're seeing a change where, you almost got to be crazy not to report on this issue, because there's so much evidence now being provided both at the unclassified and at the classified levels. And so right. A lot of this stigma that you're seeing that is kind of melting away is because people like you are willing to go ahead and report on this topic for the first time and not laugh and not giggle and, think of tinfoil hats or quote unquote Elvis on the mothership. This is a potentially real national security issue. And our politicians are getting briefed on this and they are agreeing. This is a significant, potentially national security issue. So if you want to know why that stigma is changing, I would suggest look in the mirror. It's changing because people like you have the courage to report on it.
Well, thank you so much, Lou. And okay, so this is what we need to talk about next time. I'm going to just throw it out there. We need to talk about Tom DeLonge and, Blink 132 and how he got, in touch with you and how this all came about to inform the American people. I am a huge fan of his too. So I know you and I talked about that yesterday. I want to ask you more about Bob Lazar. Maybe give me one sentence, your quick thoughts on him. Do you have any, or do you not want to talk about it?
I don't know Mr. Lazar. I've never met him and I don't know him personally. So, I think it's probably, as I mentioned earlier, I don't like to give my opinion, especially if it's uninformed opinion.
Right.
I don't even like to give opinions about myself, quite frankly, let alone somebody else. So I'll probably politely, again, deflect that question as well. But Tom, totally I can talk about. I know Tom quite well.
Totally fine. So Tom is good, and I'm going to get into more about Uruguay. I want to talk about I actually did cover an event in Washington, D.C. I don't know if you remember this. It was a big congressional hearing that happened years ago, and people from all over the world testified. That would be, you remember that? It was that
was a citizen. I heard about the citizens hearing. We stayed away from it on purpose because obviously, we didn't want to cross streams, but we were aware of it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the citizens hearing. So I was very well. I talked to the folks that were witnesses to Rendlesham Forest incident in Great Britain near our nuclear sites. I talked to pilots from Iran, pilots from British Airways that actually saw and gave testimony to Congress that they actually saw unidentified aerial phenomenon that they could not explain. So I would love to get into all those details with you. And before I let you go, is there any last words you'd like to say? I mean, because I think for so many people, this is kind of a frightening new idea for them, like we may not be alone. And if we're not, and what we're seeing belongs to a civilization which appears to be far more advanced than ours, that's a little concerning.
I think with every challenge comes opportunity. I think it can absolutely be concerning. I also think there could be, potentially some benefits if that was the case. Mm-hmm. I would like to say one alibi here, and that is if people really want to know how serious the government is taking this, they only have to look at the Rendlesham incident, which you just brought up, and realize that 2 individuals that were directly involved in that incident, I won't go into more detail, but your audience can look it up, have just recently been given full benefits, disability benefits by the U.S. government, and it specifies because of their involvement in the Rendlesham incident. That is on paper. That is documented by the U.S. government admitting they sustained injuries as a result of that event. So I'll leave you and your audience with that, and also the fact that you asked me, is it possible there's life in the universe? And my response is, just look around you. Life is everywhere. On this one little rock we call Earth, life is in the deepest part of the Antarctic ice. It's in the darkest and deepest places of the ocean. It's on the tallest mountains. It's everywhere. So I think maybe what we need to do is kind of sit back for a little bit and maybe reevaluate of what we consider life is and what it means to be a living thing, perhaps.
I think I couldn't have said it better myself. That was excellent, Lou. Thank you so much. You have given me so much hope and so much to think about. It is probably one of the things that I think makes every human being, the biggest question is, who are we? Why are we here? Are we alone? And now we probably know that we are not. Just looking into this is going to be, I think it's going to be a lifetime pursuit of mine. And thank you for agreeing to be on the show with me today. I really appreciate it. All right. I don't even know how to top that. I can't top that. So I'm wrapping it up. Remember, I'm going to bring Lou Elizondo back on this show because I want him to explain so much more. I need to talk to him about so much more. For you Earthlings, thank you so much for joining me here at the Sara Carter Show. Remember, please subscribe to the Sara Carter Show on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you're enjoying the show, we would love to have you give us a kind review and a 5-star rating. Remember, right here, we are taking back the story. Thank you so much. This is where the story begins.